and welcome to the program. It's the last day of January here in Korea, and I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. Loans taken out by people here in Korea to pay for their lump sum 전세 deposits have hit a record high amid soaring prices and stagnant income growth. U.S. President Donald Trump is calling for a change in the tax code to reduce trade deficits, but will an adjustment actually bring about more growth? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. But first, Korea's acting president and Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won has refreshed his vow to boost the economy in order to shore up the recovery momentum. Here's a portion of his remarks from today's cabinet meeting.
해외 시장 진출, 또 창업 촉진, 규제 혁신, 과학기술과 ICT 활용 등 네 가지 방향에서 활로를 찾고 있습니다. 먼저 해외 시장 진출이 경제 회복의 견인차가 될 수 있도록 노력해야 하겠습니다.
In order to help Korean companies looking to expand overseas, the government has designated 5 special envoys in areas ranging from regional infrastructure to international finance. Hwang also invited political party leaders for dialogue, saying that communication between the government and the National Assembly is crucial to tackling outstanding challenges. He also asked lawmakers to pass economy and reform-related bills during the extraordinary session that begins on Wednesday. Korea's construction industry plans to hire more people in the first half of this year, while shipbuilders continue efforts to downsize. According to forecasts by Korea Employment Information Service and Korea Institute for Advancement of Technology, the number of jobs in construction will rise by 0.9%, or 17,000 in the first half on year, on the back of rising investment in housing and non-residential structures. The shipbuilding industry, however, is set to reduce hiring. The number of new jobs is expected to decrease by 15% from last year, or 27,000, due to an ongoing restructuring drive, a sluggish global economy, and oversupply of ships. Although the electronics sector and finance and insurance services are set to hire more people, the overall outlook remains grim due to the massive loss projected in shipbuilding. Over in the U.S., Samsung Electronics looks to have toppled a U.S. manufacturer to become the market leader in household appliances. According to market tracker TrackQline, Samsung Electronics captured 17.3% of the U.S. market last year, trailed by America's longtime heavyweight Whirlpool. LG Electronics rounded out the top 3 with 15.7% of the market share. This marks the first time that Samsung Electronics has topped the survey on an annual basis. It quizzes respondents on 5 key consumer electronic products, including refrigerators, washing machines, and dryers. The strong performance was attributed to the Korean giant's push of high-end products. It also comes as Samsung and LG Electronics both are reviewing plans to build factories in the U.S. amid concerns that the Trump administration could roll out high tariffs on imports. Data shows that bank loans to finance lump sum deposit 전세 homes shot up by the fastest pace last year. The higher cost for housing is also prompting many to move out of the capital city. Our Lee Ji-young has more.
It's getting more and more expensive to rent a home in Seoul. As a result, an increasing number of people are turning to local banks to finance their lump sum 전세 deposit. According to data compiled by the country's top 5 commercial banks, the aggregate balance of 전세 loans increased every year from 2010 to reach as much as $29 billion last year, up from $20 billion in 2015. That marks the biggest jump of about $8.8 billion, up sharply from the gain in the previous year. According to Kookmin, while the average 전세 fee in Seoul stood at around $250,000 as of 2014, that figure jumped to $360,000 in just 2 years. That's equivalent to about 73% of the actual property value.
전세 prices are climbing because landlords are switching over to monthly rent. But since incomes are stagnant, more people are taking out loans.
Statistics Korea said monthly income rose only 0.7% in the third quarter of last year compared to the same time the previous year. But when taking into account the inflation-adjusted real incomes, monthly earnings actually fell about 0.1%, prompting more people to turn to banks for financial support. The Land Ministry says with housing conditions so hard to meet in the capital city, hordes of people are leaving Seoul to move to the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province instead, which has home prices at about 60% of the price in Seoul. The number of Seoulites who settled down in Gyeonggi-do province hit a 6-year high last year. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The combined balance of Korea's government bonds and special bonds issued by public institutions reached 918 trillion won, or about $784 billion as of the end of last year, surpassing the 900 trillion won mark for the first time. Korea Financial Investment Association said Tuesday that last year's figure is 2.5 times the amount tallied just 10 years ago, when the total came to around $310 billion. The rising level of debt has been a potential source of concern as the government looks for ways to boost growth. With discussions about yet another supplementary budget on the rise this year, the amount could swell at a faster pace over the next 12 months. The United States has formally withdrawn from the Trans-Pacific Partnership a matter of days after U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to pull Washington out of the 12-nation trade deal. Acting U.S. Trade Representative Mary Pagan asked New Zealand in a letter to notify the 10 other nations that the U.S. does not intend to become a party to the TPP and has no legal obligations arising from its signature on February 4th of 2016. The letter added that Washington remains committed to taking measures designed to promote more efficient markets and higher levels of economic growth at home and abroad. And after pulling the plug on the mega Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, it looks like U.S. President Donald Trump is inching closer to mapping out plans for a border tax, targeting countries like Mexico, China, and Germany. And such potential changes to the U.S. tax code are raising fears among export-dependent emerging markets. Take a look.
At the center of U.S. President Donald Trump's bid to make America great again has been his drive to bring jobs back home. Just last week, Trump reiterated his plans to build a wall along the border with Mexico and impose a 20% tax on all Mexican imports. And then there's another proposal in question, the border adjustment tax, which Republicans have been mulling over as part of a comprehensive corporate tax reform. The plan would subject importers to higher taxes than exporters, or those that produce at home for domestic consumption. It's also called a destination-based tax because products would be taxed based on where they are sold rather than where they're made. Economists say a change like this could result in less trade, which would also drag on growth throughout the world. Korea is not safe from it either, considering that it's largely dependent on exports. In fact, major Korean conglomerates such as Samsung, LG, and Hyundai Motor Group are all thinking about establishing manufacturing facilities or boosting investment in the U.S. in response to Trump's potential import tax shakeup.
And to tell us more about this, Professor Yang Jun-suk from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. Great to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So tell us more about Trump's border tax idea. I mean, how does he expect this to help Americans?
Okay, well, there's actually two versions of the border tax that's being talked about in the United States. So I'm going to call one the President Trump version and one the U.S. Republican version. Now, the President Trump's version is basically tax countries that he doesn't like or tax firms that he doesn't like. So that's going to be very specific, country-wise or company-wise. And there's a big question about the legality of that, not only in the WTO, but also in U.S. law. Then the Republican version is a bit more complex. It's a bit more technical. It's a lot more technical, and perhaps it's a bit more interesting. What the United States wants to do, what the Republicans want to do is restructure structure their corporate taxes to be more like a value-added tax. And as a part of that value-added tax, you would have border adjustment taxes. Now, Korea has a version of border adjustment taxes of its own. Korea charges value-added tax for a lot of goods that people buy in Korea. And, the idea is that the imports, once you pay the tariffs and once it undergoes customs procedure, you should treat it the same as a domestic good.
Okay.
Now, if the domestic goods are charged value-added tax, which is a form of sales tax, but the imported goods do not, then that's discriminatory behavior, even though it's sort of pro-imports. Now, WTO rules say that it has to be non-discriminatory. Imported goods, once they undergo tariffs and customs procedures, has to be treated the same as a domestic good. So the WTO allows imported goods to be charged not only tariffs, but value-added tax equivalent to domestic value-added tax if that country charges a value-added tax.
Okay.
Now, the legal problem is that the United States wants to make their corporate tax more like a value-added tax, but legally, it's not a value-added tax. It's a corporate tax. So there's a big argument. If you use economic interpretation and treat this as a value-added tax, then there's a possibility that it won't act as that much of a trade barrier. But that depends on some assumptions. If these assumptions hold true, then what would happen is that exchange rates go up. The dollar would appreciate and it would eliminate the advantages that U.S. exports have. But if these do not hold, these assumptions do not hold, then it could act as an incentive for more exports abroad and to act as an import barrier. So that's a big controversy going on right there. Legally, however, if the United States changes their corporate laws like this, corporate taxes, then for their exports, they're not charging corporate taxes. For their imports, they are charging corporate taxes on foreign companies.
Right.
So legally, it could be seen as a forbidden subsidy.
Now, like you said, it's going to affect other countries, obviously. So what are some of the countries doing in response to this potential border tax?
Okay, well, a lot of countries are they're sort of lost right now because every country has its own problems right now. But the big argument is going to be whether exactly how much of an effect this will have on the exchange rates. Because, under a simple model, the exchange rate increase will completely offset any advantage that you get from taxes. But there's some doubts on that interpretation. But legally, the United States are going to exempt corporate taxes from exports. So originally the Republicans were going to try to convince other countries that this is almost equivalent to a value-added tax with some payroll tax deduction. But right now, because President Trump has been touting his version of border tax, and that is a definite trade barrier, I'm not sure if it's going to succeed in convincing a lot of other countries.
Then what about Korea? What impact would it have on the Korean economy and Korean exporters?
Well, under the legal interpretation of this corporate tax, Korea may be able to charge countervailing tariffs. That's a tariff that's given to counter the subsidies that other countries may give to its exports. Problem is, do we really want to antagonize the United States? If they do go ahead with this corporate tax, then every good exported by the United States can be hit with a countervailing tariff.
Right.
So that would cause a major trade war. On the other hand, if we don't do anything about it, then we may be hit with a big hit on our exports. So it's a very sensitive question.
You think more companies here in Korea would, I guess, establish more production facilities in the U.S. then?
Okay, well, that was one of the intention behind this law. Well, the United States charges its taxes based on global profits, and the value-added tax changes that into charging taxes on what the companies sell within the United States. And then the Trump version is just basically hitting the companies and hitting the countries that he doesn't like or he thinks that is cheating the United States.
Right.
So especially if you're dealing with the Trump version of the law, then it may be better to have some production facilities in the United States.
Now, but some are actually saying that Trump's border tax is actually going to put the brakes on U.S. growth. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, one of the possibilities is that if the theory, the assumptions do not hold true and there is an effect on trade, then the imports, the price of imports will rise. So that would be imported goods, consumption goods, and imported intermediate goods. So that would probably increase the inflation rate in the United States. It would increase costs to consumers, and it will probably have a regressive effect on the U.S. taxes. So that might hurt growth. But a lot of Republicans are arguing that if they design this law correctly so that it reduces the burden on corporate taxes, then the pro-growth effect will outweigh the retarding effect from inflation. So they're arguing that this is, at least for the United States, a pro-growth law.
Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on how this evolves. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, bye-bye.